welcome everyone to the Future of Higher Education. This is Katie, and I am sitting here today with Jane S. Gabin, who is joining us for our podcasts around the topic of just the state of college admissions at the moment, and specifically around the test optional sort of admissions currently in 2022. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Very happy to be here.
Cool. So, Jane, why don't you start off by just giving us a little bit of an intro of who you are and what your sort of, where you sit in this whole sort of landscape.
Well, I have a lot of experience. I started in the olden times, before the pandemic. I have 10 years of experience as a Associate Senior Director of Undergraduate Admissions at UNC Chapel Hill. And I was also in charge of all international undergraduate applications. And this was followed by 11 years in the New York City area as a counselor in private schools. And I did this for 11 years. And now I am an independent counselor, what's called an IEC, an independent educational consultant. So because nobody pays my salary, I am free to say whatever I want.
Okay.
And yes, there have been changes, and admissions is a very complicated landscape, but mostly it's random. Acceptance to the larger schools, the good school, the best schools, the schools that have a graduate program or have a tried and tested undergraduate program that does not rely on armies of underpaid contingent labor. These are the best. You have to rely on a lot of statistics. One of the things that's changed is more and more colleges have adopted.
So sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, continue.
Okay. The business model. And they are concerned with making a profit. You stay away from these schools. The ones that are most concerned with an academic reputation are the ones that will encourage undergraduate research. And this is exactly what you hope will be the result for your students. So schools that have an over-reliance on what I said was a vast army of contingent labor, they're only interested in the enrollment statistics and the application statistics. The more applications, the better. The more people who enroll, the better. And the quality of education itself is almost irrelevant. Where you can find this information is in the common data set. And the common data set is a tool that's used not only by college admission staff, but the outside world. And the common data set is something that every school has. On the positive side, it lists, and it's always the same information in the same order, when the school was founded, where it is, how many people are on staff, but then it breaks down to how many people are, how many professors they have, how many applicants they have, how many were accepted, and it breaks them down into gender and racial components, and it goes into all kinds of detail. What you need to do, first of all, is find it. Some schools are very, it's very obvious. If you look up, you know, Stanford University common data set, you'll get the information. Some schools hide the common data set. It should be there. If it's not there, you have to wonder, what are they trying to hide? Then you have to look up the faculty. And the faculty says, it says how many students they have and in what kinds of classes, and in terms of their job status, it tells you how many are part-time, how many are full-time. You would be surprised. It took me a long time, but I compiled the data of over 700 schools. How many are part-time, how many are full-time, and the results are amazing. Some have more than they have, more part-time than they have full-time. These are to be avoided. Some of the large schools, urban schools, have this, so you have to be very careful. Another way that higher education has changed over the past years, especially in the United States, is the incredibly high cost of private education, private or public. It's very, very expensive and very discouraging. Well, they say, oh, there's the sticker price. We have a lot of scholarships, and it still costs an enormous amount and cuts a lot of people out, who then have to pay an incredible amount for educational loans, and this follows them for years. So I was very lucky. I was very lucky at the time that I went to college, undergraduate. It was provided by my city, free of charge. I think there was a registration fee. It was $38 a semester. It no longer does this. So I have grown up without this debt. Now, for graduate school, I did have some debt. It was a low amount. The interest rate was low, and now it's high. Why does college cost so much?
Yeah.
The answer is it reflects high administrative pay, student services, and lots of fancy extras that colleges have to make themselves competitive with other schools. So I was reading, last year, one college was building a lazy river. What? You know what a lazy river is?
Yeah, I do.
It's it's a school. It's not
a water park,
a water park or an amusement park. But why should somebody make a salary of $800,000 when a faculty member has to have 2 or 3 jobs in order to teach? So,
exactly.
And that's why I recommend students to Canadian universities, European universities, which offer incredible educations at a much lower price. There is an obsession in the United States also with the, quote, top-ranked schools.
Yeah, of course.
This was created about 30 years ago, and it changed the landscape of college admissions.
Yeah.
The 3 top news magazines in the United States were Time and the U.S. News and World Report was the third ranked, and it was boring. It was a boring magazine. They invented the college rankings, and at one point, it's about 20 years ago, I met somebody who was on the staff at the time of U.S. News, and I said, "You created a problem by urging colleges to rank themselves, and there's we're number 5, or we have to be number 4, we have to be number 3." He says, "Hey, it put bread on the table. It was simply meant as a sales device to increase the sales of a news magazine." And that's why some colleges, like Bard College, refuse to participate, because the rankings are based on information that the colleges send the magazine for the rankings. And colleges have been caught in lies.
Yeah.
And, this whole thing of, where do you quote rank? It drives a competition that is not academic.
Can I ask a question quickly?
Sure.
So I personally did go to one of the schools that refused to be on the US News rankings. And I even remember being in the admission office when the new, rankings came out for that year. It was always a really funny time because, they would obviously put us at the bottom. Reed was always like very low in the rankings, and it was like always a very fun day for us, basically. And but I also did go to a high school where people were incredibly fixated on going to the top 20 schools. I actually saw that you were you a counselor at UNIS, United Nations International School? So
Yes.
I went to an international school in Shanghai, and the obsession, especially because like I went quite a few years ago now. So I was applying for schools in 2013, 2014. And the obsession at that point in time, like of the Ivies and then the top 20 schools and the US News list was just so immense. And I was part of the students who were doing all types of things to try and get the best SAT, ACT score. And I did see your sort of, I forgot what you called it on your website, but your philosophy around, what actually matters, the rational something. And so my environment was the opposite of that. And I guess, as much as we as people who are not high school students and who have been in the application process and have some expertise of some, I mean, for me, I have some sorts of expertise, but you have a lot, obviously. Like, we know that the rankings are a bit kind of irrelevant and obviously very much business oriented, like you're saying about US News. But it's hard for high school students to, I don't think it's hard for them to wrap their head around that fact, but it's like, what do they do, because there's so much pressure on them, especially from their families and things like that. So what would you say the focus should be on? It seems like it gets tougher every year. And I just can't imagine applying to schools now if it was that hard for me, like so many years ago. So what are your thoughts on that?
It takes a lot of strength to resist the pressure. I would say ask high school students need to ask questions. So somebody says, you need to get into one of the top 20 ranked schools in the United States. The question would be, how is this ranking compiled? who says that they're the top ranked schools?
Yeah.
And does top ranked mean the best
Mm.
educational experience? You're only going to be a teenager once.
Mhm.
You're only going to be a high school student once. You should make this the best time, of your life. And in fact, when you go into the world as a professional, let's say a lawyer or a physician, or they're not going to be interested in where you did your undergraduate degree,
Mhm.
or where you did your graduate work.
Mhm.
Nobody says of a physician, oh, well, where did he do his undergraduate degree? They want to know, where did he go to medical school?
Yeah.
Uh, where did he go to law school? And so that's one. It takes a lot of strength to resist the pressure, and the pressure is unfair. It really is unfair, and the pressure to get a higher SAT or a higher ACT is also unfair. First of all, I don't like any of those tests. I wish they would
Okay.
all go out to sea and like sink. Um, you can prep for them,
Mhm.
but it doesn't increase your knowledge.
Yeah.
Um, and once you get a score, it's over. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares how you did. Um, you can. It's also related to economic opportunity and how much
Mhm.
money you have, because it costs money to take the prep courses. If you grow up in an environment that you're surrounded by books and you're surrounded by people who ask questions, who have long discussions after dinner, you're going to do better. Or if you
Mhm.
read a lot, you're going to do better than simply having money and and breathing is, it doesn't make the tests any, uh, doesn't make the results any better.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I would say that it doesn't really matter. Now, a very low score is indicative of a problem, but
Yeah.
somebody could get a very low score because it's their first uh, exposure to this type of multiple choice test. I could never finish the test myself. When I took it, I would always say, well, that answer it's too obvious, and
Mhm.
so it's got to. So I would spend half the time of the test time psychoanalyzing the questions and never answering. But too much money is
Mhm.
made in test administration, in facilities, in test prep programs. That's why they won't disappear,
Yeah.
because too much money is being made. And admissions offices won't tell you this,
Mhm.
but sometimes a test score is put aside. Oh, let's say the average of getting into this certain school, is 1,300, but a student has 1,000 or doesn't quite, but is a real leader at the school, and they're going to take that student if that
Yeah.
student is, and that goes into the randomness, you
Yeah.
know.
Each situation is different. And
Mhm.
so with this sort of more recent move into a lot of schools going test optional, especially with COVID and stuff like that,
Mhm.
what does that mean to you? And what does it mean to you in terms of how the landscape is changing?
Okay, it means that other things are going to count more.
Right.
So how you spend your time means
Hmm.
more, and how your list of activities means more, and that essay is very important. It's not necessarily the way it's written, but what it says about your attitude.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so if somebody writes about, well, what I did, but by the way, writing about the pandemic is going to be so overdone. It's it's how you reacted to things. What they're basically looking for in the essay is something that humanizes you, something that tells a little human interest story about your values. And it doesn't have to be the best.
Mhm,
It just, and the same thing is true with the people who recommend you.
mhm.
This is very, very important.
Yeah.
Your recommenders. So those things are more important. But at the bottom line is the transcript.
Mhm.
How are you going to do academically? Because no college wants to admit a student who's going to fail,
Yeah.
except for those colleges who are just, bean counters and they just want people to enroll.
Yeah.
Um, no, they would like a prediction that somebody is going to be successful. And they don't
Mhm.
care where. It doesn't matter, whether the person is going to be a student leader or an activist or an athletic leader or, a musical performer. But they want somebody who's really good, who's going to stick to the program.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think is the impact of this new test optional, or not new, but this increasing popularity of test optional admissions on the sort of more underrepresented and economically less advantaged demographic?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And it also has, it makes it more difficult to get into those schools because, to some schools, because the numbers of applications go up. So they have only a finite number of acceptance letters that they can send, and it it will make it more competitive. But I think go for test optional, sure. And test optional means test optional. So you can send it or not send it. And it won't affect the impact that you have on the admissions committee. And it shouldn't. It never should.
Definitely. And sorry for the car alarm going off in the
That's
background. But on that topic, I feel like there's also something to be said around, if there is a more focus on extracurricular stuff, um, people can get really creative, obviously, but in some ways, like those extracurriculars are also still dependent on people's accessibility and place in the world. And so for, students who maybe have less opportunities like that, what are the ways in which you think they can still come up with or have a very, very like compelling application?
if the opportunity is something within their neighborhood and they write about it convincingly, that's fine. You know how many applications I've read where the it lists oh, I worked for the UN. Okay, come on. You your mother works for the UN and created this opportunity for you. And so, they laugh at things like this, which are obviously manufactured. But somebody who writes from the heart about working with somebody in their local neighborhood, this is incredible. Um, One of the best letters that I ever read came from somebody who worked with a student, and this student was poor, and the student went to a public high school um, in eastern North Carolina, single parent family, lived in a trailer park. Um, she would go to school and then she would come home and she would tutor other little kids who lived in the trailer park, and they looked up to her. She didn't write about this. She wrote about something else. This was all in a detailed letter from her guidance counselor. This made such an impression on me as a reader. I didn't, who knows what her scores were? I don't remember that. I don't remember them. But I remember the story about the trailer park and her coming back from the public high school and tutoring the younger children. And of course, she was admitted, and she's her life today is probably, you know, completely different from somebody else who lived in the trailer park. So this means a lot. They can tell from the essay. Oh, that's another thing. It's, you know, I'll help you polish your essay. I'll get it to, you know, to be accepted. All of this costs an incredible amount of money. So somebody who writes from that, it sounds like a real teenager wrote it, and not an adult. So the test optional and is fine. It's so much of the admissions industry, and it is an industry, is garbage.
Definitely. I definitely hear you. And it's very unfair that I mean, after I did the process, I just thought it was, you know, looking back, I was like, I can't believe I was like 17 or 16 when I was starting to think about these things. And it was just so driven by money and things like that. I was shocked afterwards, you know, it was just, especially after I started working at the admission office and I saw how things were really done. Because a lot of the stuff that you said today is definitely what I also witnessed there. And that's coming, I mean, Reed is a great school in a lot of ways, but, and they have like a certain reputation of being, you know, they care less about those things that others care about. But in the end, it's still a business. And, you know, that was the biggest thing I took away, I think, by working there. But I still really did enjoy it. And I feel like this test optional thing, in my opinion, feels like a step in like a more right direction. So I guess my next question for you is also around that. What do you hope to see change sort of in this admission space towards the right step, if there is one?
Admissions has got to change if higher education is to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Admissions must change, and colleges have to abandon some of the things that they that they should stay true to their mission statement, which is basically to encourage education, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
The business model may be working for some, but it's not working for the majority of people. I don't know exactly the steps that have to be taken. One is to reduce the salaries of administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anybody who's, let's say, who makes 800,000 says, gee, I will sacrifice and I will accept only 500,000 and have 300,000 go into scholarships. But that's the way it should be. In fact, nobody should make $800,000. Mm-hmm. It should be capped. If you're going to go into education, accept lower salaries, and it should be across the board. And there shouldn't be the huge gap that there is. There should be more full-time faculty. There should be the higher correlation of contact between faculty members and undergraduate. I mean, your school, Reed, is a wonderful example. They don't have vast armies of they don't even have vast armies of contingent labor, but
Yeah.
a lot of colleges do. And they say, well, this is the way we can make it affordable. No, it's only part of the way that the college is affordable. And they can cut out a lot of these extras, but nobody will volunteer for this. They won't. You need to have an overhaul of the business methodology so that making a profit for some is not the major reason for a school existing. Some colleges will go out of business. They should.
Mhm.
They provide very little in terms of service. Um, Cutting down the cost is of high importance.
Yeah.
So is this American insistence that everybody should have a college degree. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not necessary. It's not necessary in a lot of fields. I have two children in their 30s. One is a journalist, one is a farmer. And the farmer said, I love education. I love learning, but I don't like school. So don't go. And people said to me, how come you have a son who doesn't want to go to college? What's wrong with you? I said, he doesn't want to go. I'm not going to tie him up and drag him. But the idea is that everybody should get a college degree is unfair.
Yeah.
And also, how do people know when they're 16 or 17 if they want to go? Sometimes it's later. There should be this. There should be less of an emphasis. Again, that impacts the college prep programs, the summer programs that are given, even like yours.
Yeah.
But the idea that everybody must get a degree, no, everybody shouldn't. People should go to pursue higher education if they want it and when they want it.
Yeah. I think something that, although a lot of students obviously use our program as an opportunity to put it on their extracurricular and be able to like stand out in their own way when they apply for colleges. What I also personally I found difficult was the just like the change, the different type of learning between like high school and college. It was just such a stark difference. And I didn't grow up in the US, so then I wasn't surrounded by that sort of dinner table conversations, which when I went to college realized really impacted like my experience, just as you said. And when what I realized with the students that do our programs is that because they've been given an opportunity to work with university professors, and our TAs are usually the grad students, so the professors that they actually work with are like full-time university professors. They have been able to get a very nice exposure into what college is like, and to a small degree, but I think that exposure has like students have told me that it helps them with understanding if that's even something they like, and I would definitely wish that I had some kind of opportunity like that instead of just going to like prep classes for this test that I take once, like but instead do some type of, also they do research obviously in subjects that they're very interested in, and usually these kids are also very, very like they are interested in something that is at a college level, but they are in high school. So it's nice to be able to see them explore those things. And I feel like to some degree, I even feel like people have lost the meaning of what extracurricular is, And one thing, I mean, I think our program is for specific types of students, definitely, not for everyone. But if anything, it is allowing people to actually explore what they like, which is cool. But I do agree with you. I do agree with you that yeah, it's just the emphasis is all over the place at the moment. Would you say, I also wanted to ask you if you think that there has been a transition into students at American high schools wanting to study abroad more, like European universities or Australian universities and things like that?
It's going to take concerted effort.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not happening yet, but European colleges, that can afford to, they've been doing it for years, since they have the British universities have a consortium that comes to major cities, and that's that sort of thing. But parents are you've got to get into a top ranked.
Yeah.
I agree with you that the summer programs are great for experience, for exploring, for actual learning, and that's why they're wonderful. But some people just use them as, well, because I went into this program, it shows that I'm interested, and therefore I should be a good candidate. No, you don't. You do it mostly for the experience. On the other hand, it costs.
Yeah.
So somebody might, be a grocery store bagger, at Aldi or, Trader Joe's, or, and that's how they spend their summer. But they can write about that.
Yeah.
The thing that I can recommend high school students to do is read. Read widely. It will improve your vocabulary. It will improve it. The world opens up. It's like a doorway into the whole world. Not only does your vocabulary increase, but your awareness of what the world can be increases, and makes you a more interesting person. And you never know, if you're a bagger at a grocery, for whom you're bagging the groceries. You get into a conversation. It has to be made more accessible. Oh, and also counselors at public high schools are burdened because there isn't a college counselor. There are counselors, and each counselor is usually responsible for a certain group in the alphabet. They have a high load, and they're supposed to provide counseling in terms of college, choosing your courses, problems at home, problems putting food on the table, getting work after school. They can't handle it all.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely, the resources are distributed in an incorrect way, to say the least.
Yes.
Very incorrect. So I definitely hear that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, I continue.
I want to say that imposes the classism that comes out of higher education is replicated in the real world, and it is a class system.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's just a very like you said, I think if it doesn't change soon, it'll be, yeah, it's gonna topple over for sure. And yeah, I mean, that was also the last question I was gonna ask you, was around what your advice would be to students who are applying. So Yes, you answer that very well. I also agree with you that just reading and having a good vocabulary and just even learning how to write and express yourself and things, just simple things like that is where the focus should be. And it's just kind of, all kind of formed into a bit of a capitalist business centric uh, perspective now. And it's just sad that it's, 16, 17-year-olds, even sometimes even younger, like those are the kind of people in our world who are trying, like it's focusing on.
Yes.
Yeah, and in the end, I think the students are just so ambitious and excited, and they just want to do what's good and right, and it is a tough space to navigate though.
It is very, very difficult. But
Yeah.
but grown-ups run higher education,
Hmm.
and they should act like grown-ups.
Definitely. Definitely,
And
definitely.
a lot of them do. A
Uh-huh.
lot do. But if somebody is mostly interested in what's good for me,
Hmm.
no, the system of higher education is heading for a fall. And it's not because of the pandemic, although the pandemic has exacerbated the changes and has
Hmm.
speeded things up, but it's made us see the class differences
Hmm.
in the population. And I don't care what people say about America. It is a class society. It's
Hmm.
just as much of a class society as the British. It's just a little bit different. But the emphasis on making money is just profits over everything else. No.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
this overuse of part-time faculty is
Hmm.
not a new thing. It
Hmm.
started 50 years ago, but it's been getting worse and worse and worse. And the reason is that aspiring academics think, okay, it was true for the past generation, but maybe it'll be different for me. Or
Hmm.
I'm better than such. What if they see me? Everybody wants to succeed. Some do, but most don't.
Yeah, definitely.
And colleges will not learn that this is wrong until they have a number of classes with no teachers.
Mm.
Then they will see the error.
Hmm. That would be, yeah, that sounds very dystopic and not far off either. Yeah, I mean, I think you have so many, what you've said today is just so important for everyone to hear because there are some things that desperately need to be different. And I think this whole coming off of the test optional sort of subject it's such a great springboard for this conversation.
Mhm. That's,
Yeah.
I wish everybody to be successful
Mhm.
in their drawing, but just tell the people who are managing applications, just relax.
Yeah,
Relax.
definitely.
And the thing about, you're only a teenager once. Yeah, you might try to extend the years, but it only happens once, and parents should just rejoice that they have a living child who can be reasoned with.
I love that. I love that. And I think on that note,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we might need to wrap this up,
All right.
but Jane, I really, really appreciated chatting
Sure.
to you. The last question I did have is if you're okay with us posting maybe a snippet of
Fine.
the on like Instagram and YouTube. Okay.
Fine.
And I can't wait for our students and the people who follow us to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
Uh, I think everyone is very much in need of advice when they're applying. And so this is very, very much appreciated. I've also learned so much. I mean, just having not been sort of involved in the admission space in a while, it's so cool to hear about, the different things. And I only am leaving with more questions for you. But if we ever have another topic, I'm definitely going to get in touch
Great,
again and hope we can chat again.
great, Katie. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And
Okay,
have a good rest of your day.
you too. Bye-bye.
Cool. Bye.